Well, welcome to another wonderful episode of Open Talk, and I am so proud and honored to bring our special guest today, Andy Katz, who is a Sony Artisan, an educator, a book writer, a wine enthusiast, and many, many other things we're going to discuss today. Andy, how are you?
Well, considering life is just as crazy as could be, I'm doing very, very well. How about you, my friend?
I'm hanging in there, and you know what?
There you
The
go.
same way. I think we all kind of go through. Just because this has been such like an unprecedented event, and none of us can really put our heads around the gravity of it all. It's we go through these highs and lows. It's like one moment you think, oh, maybe we're pulling out of this, and the next minute it's like, oh, it doesn't look like we're pulling out of this anytime
Yeah,
soon. So there's this indefinite feeling of what the future holds because there's no way to answer it right now.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's a lot of question marks, and you have a tendency to go internally, which at some point is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
You really try to
Where
figure
are
out
you?
what's
Where are
important.
you? Since we can't be in the same studio at the moment, where are you right now?
I'm in San Francisco.
And how's that been in terms of the state of San Francisco right now, and
Well, San
what you're doing?
Francisco, compared to just about any other city, I'll knock on wood, is really, really good.
Nice.
I mean, compared to anyone else, we've been very, very lucky or very, very smart. I don't know which one.
Yeah. So I'm going to dive right into this, and we're going to kind of go into the way, way back time machine. And where were you born?
I was born in White Plains, New York, and that was back in late 18th century. No, it was the
Nice.
19th century.
Still working. Just the daguerreotype was brand new. It was all the rage.
Yeah. The Bible was just found.
And where did you grow up there as well?
I grew up in Scarsdale, New York.
Scarsdale.
Yeah, and then I was there until I went to college, and I went to college.
Oh, you're skipping away too fast, man.
Okay, go ahead,
Way
talk
too
to me.
fast. No,
Yeah.
we're gonna
I'm
take our
ready.
little time with this. We're
You want to
gonna
talk about
enjoy
me
it a
on
little
the
bit.
baseball team?
So, mom and dad and brothers and sisters, what kind of family dynamic?
9 to 5, work a daddy, dad, housekeeper, mom,
Hmm.
sweetest Jewish mother you'd ever want to meet. And my dad was a pretty serious businessman, and the glass was always half empty with my dad. Loved him to death. Probably the smartest guy I've ever met in my life.
Right.
And my brother is now in San Diego, and we're really close now. But he was a horrible brother growing up.
Was there competitive dynamics between you two, or
He just liked beating me up. He thought that was kind
what
of
was the
fun.
age difference?
He was 3 years older.
3 years old. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'm about 6 years under my younger brother, so
Yeah.
there was a lot of easily smacking him around until I realized he was getting stronger than me.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where just like I would pretend I was just like giving him a little love tap and hit him with everything because it didn't phase him. But next time I'll hit you harder, and that was everything I had. So growing up, where'd you go to high school? And
Well, I went to high school at Scarsdale High School, but I got into photography well before that.
so it starts even before you get to the high school.
Well before.
Where was the introduction to photography then?
My father brought, and this is very unlike my father got a gift of a gorgeous book from Joseph Karsh, the portrait photographer from Canada, and it was called Portraits of Greatness, and the book was printed in Switzerland. It was this magnificent book. The reproductions were unbelievable. I was 8 years old, and I was looking at this, and I thought, man, this is unbelievable. And literally a light bulb went off in my head, and I said, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
So these pictures would mean something to you.
Absolutely. And I own two Karshes. And
You're not the little bit suppressed that I was that queued up to bring up those pictures?
I was very impressed, actually. Well done. Well done. And I own a couple of Karsh photos, and before he died, he owned one of mine, which was quite
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So at an early age, that book was enough of an impression maker to say, I want to do something, I don't know what yet, in photography.
Absolutely. And then I got a camera, a little Argus twin lens reflex.
Was that your very first camera?
My very first camera was an Argus twin lens reflex.
What was it like to get? Did you have to save up? Was it a gift? How did you obtain that camera?
At that age, I think my dad bought me that camera. It probably was $2, but he bought me the camera. The film was the expensive part. And then I set up a darkroom at a very, very early age. And I don't know how the hell I did it financially, but I imagine that my dad probably sponsored that for me. And I had it in the attic of the house. And the attic of the house, there was a space for it. The problem is in the summer it was about 110 degrees. In the winter it was about 25 degrees. It was in New York. So, I learned how to alter my development style due to whether it's summer or winter at a very early age.
And so you, from very early on, had the support of your parents in photography.
They did support me in photography for sure.
Were they trying to guide you to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that?
Yeah, even though I'm Jewish, they thought that with my grades, I would never be a doctor or a lawyer. So they were hoping that I'd do something, but they wanted me to, they said, go to business school after high school. And then if you still like your hobby, you could go back to that, but there was no chance of that. And then, to give them kudos, I went to photo school, and my dad paid for photo school. So
photo school was after high school or
after high school? Correct.
After high school.
Yeah. So while I was in high school, I took classes with Fred Picker. I don't know if you remember him, the zone system. He lived in Westchester County, and I took classes with him. So I learned the zone system at a very young age.
I had a copy of that zone system for ages and tried to read it, and it just was if you, I think nowadays if you're trying to understand the zone system, it's a little foreign, and it's like but I still have a copy of it on my Dropbox.
Yeah, and then I went from that to Fred Davis's book Beyond the Zone System, and that was real insanity, because with Davis's book you had to process the film at you photographed the subject. You literally had a computer, and it would tell you what to process at. So in other words, if you're shooting a medium format film or 35 film, you had to shoot the whole roll in that same lighting situation. Because once you change the lighting situation, your development time, it got really wacky. But I became very nerdy when it came to the zone system.
Keeping like journals and notes as you were out there shooting and writing all down little notes, or you kind of kept it in your head? And
yeah, which is very opposite to me now, because I don't even use, I can barely use Photoshop. I'm really not a digital master by any means. I've got really good friends that are digital masters, but I'm not one of them.
I tend to think.
Hold on for 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
Frontline workers are sounding the alarm about too many patients.
So anyway, I was.
Let's get you seated and relax for a second, so we can cut.
So I taught a lot of darkroom. Throughout my life, I taught darkroom photography.
So when you're young, and even before you go into photo school, like how much time are you devoting to this? It's like, is it more than a hobby at this point? You're just consumed by it. Like, what are your influences at this point? Is it like, are you running around with your friends? Were you a good kid, or was it, you're watching TV, or reading books at home? What were you kind of your influences when you were really younger?
Well, I consider myself. I think I was probably a good kid. I was probably a little bit of a troublemaker. I had dyslexia and ADD, so school was really difficult for me, and they didn't know what the hell dyslexia or ADD was in those days. So
you're about the third person on Open Talk that I've talked to that said they had dyslexia, and I have dyslexia. And
interesting.
And
a lot of creative people do, apparently.
Einstein, Da Vinci, Edison, Rockefeller, all dyslexic, and there's many different things we can get into at another point. But it is an extreme visual and audio way you process things, which is, they want to call it a learning disability, which, when you're young, you can't process that because there's no scars, there's no mark to show what you have. It's all internally, so you can't kind of put your head around it. But the best way I can sort of describe it to people is the average person, say you're reading, can look at a book and go across the line, and they want to take in maybe 10 to 15 objects per second, whether that be letters or words or something like that.
Yeah.
The dyslexic person wants to take in 50 to 100 per second. So to actually stay focused on that one word and go across takes us so much more effort, because we're taking it in as a picture, as shapes, as all this type of thing all at once. So we have to go back and sit there and focus so hard to go across it. And by the time we get to the end, we've forgotten what we read at the beginning. So we have to go back there, and it's like, it drives you crazy.
It's like I describe it as, it's like watching a 2-hour movie that will take you 14 hours to watch. It just takes, but, but when I was going to school, I always got shitty grades.
Yeah.
And I never did homework. And it was unbelievable. I graduated from high school, and I it could have gone either way. But the books at the end, you'd open up and they'd crack. And my parents gave up on me as far as that. They just went, they said the only time that they ever saw me study is when do you remember parent-teacher association meetings?
Yeah, the PTAs, yeah.
So they'd go and meet with the teachers, and I'd come back and I'd fake that I was studying. They said that was the only time that I ever did it. But I
always got from the schools that go, oh no, he's very intelligent, but he's just lazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure they said I was very intelligent. But.
I think they might have. So are you, your influences at the time, are you watching lots of movies, or is it music, or like what do you
growing
think
up?
Your early years, you're kind of growing up?
I was big, huge on music. I love music. I'd go to, depending on what age I was, but I'd go to the Fillmore East and, go to Grateful Dead concerts and Jefferson Airplane concerts and Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix. I was big music. I went to Woodstock, which was an absolutely amazing experience. I went to Woodstock with Joe Yasgur, whose uncle was Max Yasgur, who owned the farm. So I was in Woodstock and stayed in an Airstream where everyone else was. Yeah, so I had like a place. I was one of the 0.0001% of people that actually had shelter.
That's awesome. So your high school years, you're going around with a camera. Are you shooting anything for the school? Are you shooting just for yourself, or how is it developing during those years?
I think I had tried to become a school photographer, but I didn't get in. They didn't take me.
I bet they regret that now. Damn it!
Oh no!
I'll show you.
I would always take pictures of my friends. I'd always take pictures of,
Was it a sort of a flight of fancy amongst your friends, or they knew you as like the guy with the camera?
All my friends could tell you that I was the guy with the camera.
Yeah.
Even in elementary school.
So at that point, you're saying, I want to, pursue this more, and you're looking at places to go in college to even further your interest in photography at this point?
Absolutely, yeah.
So what led you, and how did you that and kind of path take you into?
Well, I knew I was going to go to California. That was number one. I knew I was going to go to photo school. So I got into a school called California College of Arts and Crafts, which was in Oakland. And I think they changed the name because it sounded like it was a basket weaving school. But they changed it to California College of, I don't even know what it is. But I went there for one semester and I realized this is not I was pretty cocky, and I felt that, I wasn't learning anything, and this is, and my girlfriend at the time's best friend's boyfriend went to Art Center College of Design. So I found out about Art Center, so I transferred to Art Center, which was a really, really good school. And Art Center was a school that didn't really teach you creativity. It taught you the nuts and bolts of taking pictures. And the first 2 years, you could only use 4x5 cameras, which was brilliant. Wow. It slowed you down.
Yeah.
It made you careful. And you do these, I remember the 9 negative tests, where you take 9 pictures and one was underexposed by half a stop, normal development, minus development, plus. And if you didn't have those grays right, you had to do the whole damn thing over again. And, you and I could do that now in 10 minutes, but, when you're doing that and you got a 4x5 and this and that, and you got the gray card and you're worried about lighting change, it was a big friggin' deal. But I dropped out of Art Center, although I've spoken at Art Center since then, but I dropped out because I was getting the same teachers, and it was a very expensive school, but I learned a lot at Art Center, and it really was a great discipline on that, instead of, I think that's one of the issues now of digital photography. You go out there and put it on automatic and take a picture. Honestly,
I was just about to ask you, do you feel, photographers are really kind of losing out on doing all of that slow down process and really kind of knowing the fundamentals of photography in a way that's because they don't need to do that anymore. It's just, but are they really kind of not absorbing and grasping it all because they're not doing it?
I think it's more of a, yes, you know, because in this day and age, you know, you take a Sony any camera really, but and,
we'll get into Sony, trust me.
and put it on automatic.
Yeah,
you could be a stop and a half off, and it's not going to kill you.
Yeah,
you know, if you shot a black and white Panatomic X and you're a stop and a half underexposed, your shadows were done.
Especially if you're a slide film.
It does make a huge difference. Now, it also gives people a lot of freedom that if they wanted to, all they'd have to do is worry about light and what they're shooting and not worry about the technical spot of it. I mean, you know, you don't need a computer like Fred Davis had where, you know, where you're doing an incident meter for 3 different spots and you're putting it in a computer and this and that. So I don't think there's really a downside on it. I think there's actually a lot of it. I think it's the greatest time in the world to be a photographer is now, because things are light. The
tools we have now, I mean, it's almost, it's baffling the ease of what we have, because if you thought of, you know, just even 10 years ago, what it took even a film production, you know, to get these, you know, amazing aerial shots and then a tracking shot or a steady cam shot, all of that now fits in a backpack where you can put a drone, a gimbal, and it's absolutely incredible that the tools we have to make stuff. In a laptop, you can actually edit it too. I mean, you can put a whole studio into a backpack now.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And you know, I think it's creating some really pretty phenomenal work as well.
Yeah. So at this point, you're in college, and have you had your first job yet? Oh, and was photography, you know, always like you had your eyes set on? There was no other career?
Never, ever once in my life did I ever waver from it. Yeah.
Have you had your first job yet?
Yeah, you know, in high school, I did a couple of portraits for some people. I did, you know, like a store opening or something, you know, just goofy things, but I got paid something. It was probably very, very minuscule, but I did get paid something for it.
So even before college, you were a paid photographer?
Before college, I was a paid photographer. Let's not talk about how much I got paid.
Well, yeah.
Probably about
at least you can say
probably as much as I've gotten paid in the last 3 months.
So your time at college, you're getting influence from different things. Is your interest in photography taking different ways to portraiture? Is it the landscape? Are you getting mentors or people that are really kind of influencing you at this point? Is it changing your atmosphere of photography?
Yeah, it was funny for somebody that was so shitty in school. I was really into the library now because I'd go and I'd take out every book on photography. So I became a huge fan of Ansel Adams and Paul Strand and Joseph Karsh and Eugene Smith. I was just, you know, there were all these people that, and I would really just look at these books for a long, long time and just love it. And yeah, I mean, that's a whole different subject now because people don't look at books that much anymore. They look at screens, and it's such a different thing when you see a backlit image than, you know, something that's laid out on paper.
Yeah. And I think that goes into the whole thing of printing, you know, which is sort of becoming a lost art form, and that whole tactile of feeling something. And me, when I finally realized after my 3rd career reboot that I wanted to be a photographer, and going into that dark room and seeing what it took, and there was no Control Z. I'm like, I'm not going to be a printer ever. I'm like, it's just like, it's another mastery. And so I'm like, I'm going to just focus on photography. Were you ever like, I'm going to print my own stuff? And what degree did you print your own material? And what was that like for you?
I printed 100% of my stuff. Well, 100%, but probably 90% I still do. But when I was in Colorado, I had a darkroom that's about as big as my apartment is in Stanford. I had a huge darkroom. I had 3 enlargers because I used to teach a lot, and I was a pretty darn good printer, and I was very comfortable doing that. But when I was, you know, when I was making a living in photography, there was very little that I'd say no to. I mean, there was no ego attached. There was mortgage
Mhm.
attached, and there was food attached. And
Yeah.
if somebody wanted to pay me what I was charging, which at certain times wasn't that much, I'd do that. And if there was a family portrait, I'd be printing that family portrait, and I would print till 11 or 12 at night every night, and then I'd teach classes. And when I was finished with the darkroom, I was so finished with the darkroom. So I remember going back to Art Center to speak. This was years ago, and I went in the darkroom and I smelled the fixer, and I said, "Get me the hell out of here!" I don't miss it at all.
Yeah.
And I loved it when I did it. And I probably, I wasn't just printing my work. I was printing family shots, et cetera, et cetera. But I spent the amount of hours I spent in a darkroom. I probably spent more time in a darkroom than just about any photographer I could think of, as opposed to somebody that made a living printing.
Yeah.
I was constantly in there. I had a great stereo. I had a great bong. I had everything needed.
I love it. So you're coming to the end of your college career, and what's the transition from leaving college into, your first year out of college?
Well, I moved from college to Boulder, Colorado. My brother had been living there. I went and visited, and I thought, this is an amazing place. I went there, and I met two other photographers, and they were shooting like Hanson boots and head skis, and they were one of the best. And they let me into their group, which is both good and bad, because one of the guys was living with, like 40 years old, and living with his mother, so he didn't have to make a lot of money. And the other guy started out with a Ford Pinto, and by the time he left, he had a Maserati. Who became this huge Coke dealer. So it was kind of a weird deal. But I was doing commercial photography, but in the midst of everything, I had a travel itch. And during that time, I was sponsored to take a year to go around the world and photograph children from around the world. Now, sponsored for a year sounds great, which it was, believe me, it was the experience of a lifetime. But my budget was so minuscule that I remember when I was in Indonesia, I was staying in a place for $3 a night, and a room next to me was opening up for $2 a night, and I moved to save the dollar. It was just, I was on a mini budget, but I photographed. I mean, I got a lot of what I thought was really strong work, and I came back.
So just that important period, I don't want to skip over, just because you went from college to doing commercial photography. How did you first really get into that? How did you get your first jobs? How did you, how did they find you to sponsor, a year abroad? How did that happen?
Well, I had little shows in Boulder at little galleries and this and that. And I had my work, the singer-songwriter Dan Fogelberg saw my work. And he said, let's get together and let's do some shooting. And I did. And I did like 7 of his album covers. We became very good friends. And I shot.
Because you shot for other bands as well. Is that where that initially started?
Yeah. Then from that, I got turned on to other bands, and I was shooting musicians for a while. And then I moved from Boulder to Los Angeles and opened up a studio.
Was there a period, because you loved music so much growing up and it was such an influence, and now you're shooting musicians, you thought you were going to be, a music photographer and be a music photographer?
Yeah, I really did. And then I realized, it was funny because I was in LA and I had a studio there, and I had a partner in the studio. We just shared the studio. He did commercial work. And he goes, we've got to, sign the lease for another year. And I thought, I don't want to do this for another year. I don't want to be in LA for another year. I'd rather go travel and be in Boulder and be in the country and this and that. And I owned a home in Boulder that I bought for $30,000, literally 30. That was 8,000 feet.
At what age did you buy that? How old were you?
I was probably 22, 23.
So that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I borrowed the money, obviously. I didn't,
but that young to know, and have the foresight to buy a home, that's most 22-year-olds are still living at home nowadays. No.
The view was just astounding. It was on top of a mountain, and it was an amazing view. And there was obviously some things wrong with the spot, but the view was absolutely extraordinary. And I lived there for close to 30 years.
So you're on the road
That's-
for a year, and how does
Yeah.
that influence and change what you're doing as an artist, as a photographer? Because I mean, living abroad and all the different cultures and shooting, how does that change you?
Well, I mean, I think anybody who travels, it changes you completely. I mean, it just gives you, either you love it or you hate it. And I just got so absorbed with it. To me, it was just absolutely, I mean, this is what I wanted to do.
So do you think that year abroad was a pivotal point, and what would?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And, I came back with images that I was really proud of, and then I got more shows, and, things got, a little bit better. Not that they were bad, but I mean, as a photographer, if you can pay your bills, you're doing great. And you can say that to this day too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And do you think today's photography is basically sort of the same, or it's a whole different beast now?
I think today's photography is, I really, really feel sorry for somebody that, this is a horrible thing to say, that's thinking about making a living as a photographer. I think it's practically impossible. If I didn't, I make a majority of my living selling prints. And I think if you're a wedding photographer, then you could be okay. If you're a portrait photographer, but there's no magazines anymore. Yep. There's no ads anymore. And there's a lot of photographers. And when I was in Colorado, the University of Colorado had a master's program in photography. And they asked me to speak there, and I'd go there and I'd say, I hope you have wealthy parents, because this is not an easy way to do things. When I went to Art Center, and this is, back in the 70s, where photography was something, the head of the photo department said, there'll be 10% of you that will make a living in photography. 10% in the days where photography was a big deal. And that's probably true.
I went to NYU and I thought I was going to be a filmmaker. And early on, I had a love for cinema. And even before I knew about photography, I knew about cinematographers and film and a love for film. But I had, because of going to NYU, Tisch School of the Arts, we had two different graduations. One was for Tisch and one was for the NYU. And we had two different, graduation speakers. One, which, at the time you were like, oh, kind of cool. But now you kind of look, oh, I can't believe that was my graduation. Bill Cosby. Was one and the other was Martin Scorsese. But Bill Cosby had said, at the beginning of the Tisch, graduation, is like, parents, you should be so proud of the students and putting your, kids through, hundreds of thousands of dollars of education to be waiters, And it was exactly what you're saying. It's a very, very difficult place to be. And I think it's the best place for most photographers, if they want to be successful, is to start in business and understand business before photography.
Well, the other thing that I will say, and I think this is really, really important, if someone has a major passion to be a photographer, they should be a photographer.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's the only thing they want to do, if they thinking photography all along, they should go for it, because they'd be miserable if they.
That's me. And I didn't discover it until my 40s. And I wake up. It saved my soul. I mean, like, it literally saved my soul. I wake up happy every day. Even if there's a bad pphoto day, it's still a great day.
It's still a great day.
Yeah.
However, if you are thinking, well, I'm thinking about being a photographer, but I could be a lawyer. If you're thinking about it, don't do it. Do it as a hobby and enjoy it.
Yeah, and
I'm going to close this door because somebody's knocking a little bit. It's a little loud. I don't know what you're hearing. That should be a little bit quieter.
I can't hear you. No, and one of the things I've said repeatedly when people ask me, what's the best advice you can give to photographers? I said, if you don't wake up every day and there's a feeling in you that I have to do this and I can't explain it, go find what makes you happy to do that.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
So at this point, you've traveled around. Have you come back to the States? What's the next sort of like marker on your journey as a photographer?
Well, I went from LA doing album covers, and I moved back to Boulder. Mm-hmm. And my focus was, I got married and had a child, so there's a bit of focus there. But my focus was still to travel and to take, I always felt that it was like, images were like instead of money in the bank, I'm putting images in the bank. And I got to put as many images as the bank. And if I wasn't shooting, I would get, you know, I had to go out and shoot. And there was one time that you know, things were not great, you know, photography, you know, wasn't great, but I had to go out and shoot because I just needed to do that. So I had this Subaru, this old Subaru, and I sold the Subaru, went out and shoot, and I came back, I didn't have a car. I had to figure out what to do when I came back, but I had images.
That's what was important.
That was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
So at this point, what are you shooting on, and what's next for you?
Well, I'm shooting on, I've been with Sony. I was in the first group of Sony Artisans, which has been really, really great. My dear friend Kayla Lindquist was hired me and 6 other photographers, or 5.
So you're shooting on Sony even before their Alpha line is out there.
I was shooting the first, it was the first camera that I shot with. I was shooting film. And my friend Greg Gorman was shooting digital, and he said this Canon camera is just really incredible. And I looked at it, kind of tested it out, and I thought it was really good. And then Canon came out with the 1DS Mark II, and I thought, I think this is better than film. So I bought that camera, which in those days, what were they, like $8,000? It was ridiculous. They were very expensive cameras. So I bought a 1DS Mark II, and then immediately after that, I started a book on New Zealand. So I didn't really think about it too much. I just started shooting with a digital camera, which to me was a very easy transition because other than the storage part of it, you know, it's still focus, f-stop, and shutter speed, and, you know, it's a camera. So, you know.
I think this is a good place to kind of take a quick look down memory lane. And, you know, you say, you know, you're early in with the Sony and all that. Let's take a look at this.
I'm Andy Katz, and this is the Sony Alpha.
Oh my God. That's friggin' hysterical.
I think my
Where do you find these
things?
I do my homework now.
Look at that, the man from U.N.C.L.E.
Right? So, but you know, you go forward, and it's turned into this.
One of the many reasons why I love Sony gear is it's lightweight and compact.
I don't even know where I was here. Oh my God, that's great.
Rice fields in China to a medium focal.
Where the hell was I? Probably at a winery somewhere.
3 lenses, 2 bodies. There's nothing I cannot do with this.
Put your fingers down,
It's
Andy.
all to fit in one camera bag. And you put the overhead compartment because you never want to check your valuable gear.
Was this?
That's why
Did
I
people
love
see this?
Lightweight Sony.
Obviously for Sony. So how did the whole Sony thing come into you? Like, how was the first approach? How was that interaction?
Well, here's what happened. So I had a Canon 1DS Mark II, and Kayla said, "Would you be interested to be a spokesperson for Sony?" And I said, "Well, I don't know very much about their cameras. You know, in those days, Sony made inexpensive cameras." So she said, we're coming out with a new camera that I think is amazing. And I said, well, send it to me. And if I like it, I'm in. But, you know, if it's not as good as what I have, as much as I'd love to represent somebody, I'm not, you know, I'm a whore, but not that much of a whore. So I got the camera, and, you know, I went back to the old testing days. You know, I tested this camera against a 1DS Mark II. And it was really quite a bit better. And at those days, they had a 24-70 2.8 Zeiss lens, which was a mother of a lens.
Yeah.
Still to date, it's absolutely extraordinary lens. And I took that camera everywhere, the A900, and it was, if you shot that below ISO 400, it was an extraordinary camera, above ISO 400. But any digital camera in those days, above ISO 400, you were asking for trouble. And phenomenal camera. To this date, some of my sharpest images I've ever shot in my life were from that camera.
And I think it's important, you know, it's like a lot of times it's not about the gear, but when you're talking about certain improvements, you know, especially since the first digital cameras you were using from Sony to the ones now, there are some incredible improvements that it sort of is about the gear. What have you found in terms of, using the Sony gear now that really kind of like, as growing up, shooting film and stuff like that, that makes either your life easier or that kind of just blows your mind that it's possible to do what they're doing now?
Well, I think on both aspects, because one, it makes life easier, because when I was shooting film, I shot a lot of 35, but I still never really loved the quality of 35. So I would carry medium format cameras with me, and I didn't like square format, so it wasn't Hasselblad. So there were these RZ 6.7s, and then finally they came out with a rangefinder 6.7, which changed, which was great. Now, and those were heavy.
Yeah.
And I was young. Now I don't want to carry all that stuff. I can carry one bag and travel for 2 months and have absolutely everything that I ever want. And when Sony came out with the mirrorless camera, it was like, wow, this weight thing, this thing doesn't weigh anything, and it's got 24 megapixels, 36 megapixels, 42 megapixels, 62 megapixel camera. It's just unbelievable. This new A7R4 is amazing. I mean, I'm printing these massive size prints, and I do print large prints.
Yeah.
And the thing doesn't weigh anything. And
is that what you're mainly using as your primary camera now, is the A7R4?
Yeah. That's it. And I've got 3 or 4 lenses, and I'm happy as a pig in poop.
Yeah. So let's take a moment here, and at this point, you're sponsored by Sony. You've done a lot of education for people. Like, where are you kind of splitting your time and making money and doing different things at this point?
Well, I've published 14 books. I've done a lot of books. I am a little bit unique, I guess, that I have a kind of a company. You're looking at the company where I've assembled what I consider the best people in the world to do. I've got a designer in England who was Elliot Erwitt's designer. I met him through Elliot, and he does the design for my books. I've got a printer in Italy that I consider to be the best printer that I've ever used. So I'll talk to people about producing a book for them. So I just finished a book for a winery called Domaine Serene. So I've done self-published books on a commercial aspect. I've done books for Simon & Schuster. I've done books for Chronicle Books. I've done a lot of books, but I love that because it's creating you're creating a baby. You're creating an idea. You're shooting through the idea. You're editing through the idea, and then all of a sudden it's there. Do you just enjoy the whole process of putting a book together, or some parts I hate this part and I want nothing to do with it, but I love this part? I love the process. I really do. I mean, I think I'm a terrible editor, so I get caught up in this, and all photographers, it's like, well, wait a second, I trekked through a rainforest to take that picture. Yeah, Andy, but the picture's not that great. So just don't worry about your trekking. That's falling in love with their own pictures is always my own problem with, it's like, and it takes someone that you really trust to edit your photos, because no, I don't see what you see there because I wasn't there. It's like, oh, right. Okay. Exactly. I know there's a story. There was a picture that I took that when you don't understand how epic it is. No. Well, it's not epic in the photo. I was in Namibia, and a black rhino came after me. And literally, I'm not exaggerating, could have killed me. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I mean, I'm not saying that I was macho at all. I could never be a war photographer. I'm a chicken at heart. But I just thought, here's a friggin' black rhino. It's like all you in the running of the bulls. You think you're tough? I did the running of the rhinos. Yeah, no, but I didn't even think I was tough. It just seemed like the logical thing to do. And I'm taking a picture of this thing coming after me. And I got the picture, and it's I thought it was great because it was if you knew the story, this thing was coming after me, but it wasn't a great photo. So anyway, that's kind of So you've done education at this point. Like, how much do you throw into education, and what was the catalyst for you wanting to be an educator? I've always loved teaching. You know, would teach darkroom for a long time. I loved it. And then I would teach landscape photography. I taught at Palm Springs and, you know, other places.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love people. I mean, I really enjoy people. I love people that have a passion, because I think that's what it's all about. And I love seeing other people's work, because it's interesting. You're at the same spot and somebody has a different take than you do. And
at that point, where are you in your career after the Sony stuff, and like where are you doing more stuff of selling prints, or where is your career taking you, and how do you, like, over the last 10 years have you kind of traveled over the last 10 years, and say the last 10 years of your photography career?
Well, I've still traveled extensively, you know, Africa and Asia, and you know, I still, that's why I'm going absolutely batshit crazy now, because I can't travel. It's the first time in my life my passport has expired, which has never happened to me. But I've got to figure that out. But I have no desire.
That reminds me too. My license, my driver's license, expired on April 3rd. So
I'm here for you, brother.
All the DMVs were shut. You know?
Yeah,
I think they started to open up, but I've been, you know. So this is a good part. I think we're going to dive in and look at some of your photos, and we can discuss it as we go, because I think it's a segue. So I know you sent me a bunch of stuff, and let's take a look.
This is a project that I did on India, and I think it's the best work I've ever done. I'm trying to get I think eventually it'll be a book. I'm trying to get a publisher to publish this book. I worked on this for a long time. I went to very remote areas in India, and I love the project. India is an interesting place, because I'd go there, you know, for like a month, because it takes like a week to get there. And India is one of those things that I'd be there for a month, and day 30, if I didn't leave that place, I was going to go batshit crazy. And as soon as I'd come back, it's like, if I don't go back to India, I'd go back crazy. It's very, you really I have a love affair with India. It's a love-hate, but it's much more love than hate.
Yeah. So I know a lot of photographers get this question, and for some it drives them crazy, and for some they really kind of get introspective about it. Your style as a photographer, and when I say your style, it's sort of like, what drives you to take a picture? What do you look after? What's the composition? What is that energy? Are you looking for people, composition? What is it to you?
I think it's one thing that I'm very fortunate about, is because I love all aspects of photography. You know, there's people that are portrait photographers, they're people photographers, and they love shooting people. They have absolutely no interest in landscapes. But I love shooting landscapes. I love shooting nudes. I love shooting people. There's really no aspect of, I don't like shooting weddings because it's too damn difficult. I have no control over it. But, and I've never done that just because I'm not comfortable doing it. But I love all aspects of photography. So if I'm on a job, if I'm doing a book on Burgundy, for example, you know, I'll go into churches and look at things. I'll go to areas that have nothing to do with the wine country, because I'm always, I mean, I think it's an ADD thing. You know, you're always searching. You're always like, got it. That one's good. And then that looks good, but the light is really crummy. So I'll come back at 7:30 right before the sun sets, and I'm going to shoot it there. And if I like it there, then I'll wake up at 5:30 and I'll come up there at, you know, at 5:30 in the morning and shoot, you know. So I think that, you know, photography to me is, you know, three things. It's content, what you're shooting, and composition, how you compose it. But I think what really brings everything together is light, and light is just really what puts everything together. This photo here in Israel is kind of interesting, because you could never take this today. This was a long time ago. This was shooting film, and I think I had a 300 millimeter lens on, and I was standing on top of, this is the Wailing Wall, and I was standing on top of a building. And I think if I was going to do that today, somebody would shoot me. I mean, you know, it was kind of like a gun type of thing that I was, so yeah.
Wow. Let's go to the next photo here, and tell me about this shot.
That was a project that I did. I was in Egypt. I was with my folks, actually, and I was in Egypt, and we went into a synagogue, and there were 4 guys in the synagogue, and they said, you know, they were older Jews, and they said, when we die, the you know, the Jewish history and the whole culture is going to be gone in Egypt. And I'm not a religious person at all, but I found that to be very powerful. So I decided I was going to do a project on vanishing Jewish societies from around the world. So I spent the next year traveling around, and that was taken in Hungary, in the kind of the Jewish ghetto of Hungary. And it became a traveling show that traveled kind of all over the world.
Do you find yourself repeating themes or exploring themes throughout your career? Or do you, what are the stories that you want to tell, and what drives you to those stories?
I think anything that that I have an interest in, or yeah, I mean, I think it's so open-ended. I mean, there's so much that I'm interested in. That the only thing I don't like bullets shot at me. I've had that happen a couple of times, and neither time did I find that fun. So I'm way too chicken shit to do war. But I really appreciate people that do it, because those images are incredibly powerful.
I had Ben Lowy on before, and Margaret,
Yeah.
and you know, he obviously talking about dealing with, you know, wartime journalism. At a certain point, we're talking about, you know, the after effects of shooting that and what it does to you, but also talking about, you know, his kind of guilt of that he was chasing death basically, because as a wartime journalist, you know, those are the shots that that have the most gravity and stuff like that, and the impact of that. And I know when I was younger, I thought, wow, it'd be amazing to, you know, the 2 things I thought about doing was, you know, National Geographic, and I didn't even think about being a photographer at that time. I just loved National Geographic. I thought how amazing it would be to travel the world and shoot this and animals and stuff like that. Then I realized like most of those photographers are sitting in, you know, a little stand for like 15 days or 3 months to get that one shot. I'm like, no, that's not me. Right. Wartime is like, you know, it's like, you know, I saw, you know, Tim Heatherton, you know, and that's the reason I shoot a House of Blood. But, you know, these journalists, you know, like that, you need something that's a little different. And this adrenaline, this little something that you can walk into those kind of situations and react the way you can. And like, I'm like, I never wanted to be around that explosions or death or bullets and stuff like that. And it takes a lot, I think, for someone to do something like that.
Yeah, my hats are certainly off to him. Yeah.
So let's go into this, which obviously is, you were talking about India and other places. Let's talk about this photo.
Oh, that was in the week of Holi.
Yes.
The week of color. That was brutal. There was nothing fun about that whatsoever.
Now, were you down in? Were you shooting from like, you know, the balconies, or were you down in it?
Oh, I was way down in it, and you know, you have to put Vaseline on your hair and your face and this and that, because you're a Westerner, and I was in a remote area. I wasn't in Mumbai or, you know, and they saw me and just went, oh my God. And, you know, they had these dyes that are, who knows what they're from, these chemical dyes, and they'd come up and they'd basically throw it in your face. If your eye happened to be, there was nothing joyful about that at all. It's probably not the right thing to say, but I just got nailed so much. And then they'd pour like green goo on me. I mean, by the time I came back, I was, you know, I was a very colorful guy, but, and then, you know, obviously there's issues with camera equipment and things like that. Yeah. So
when you went there, were you all prepped to kind of wrap it up, or was this sort of like, you know, trial by fire, like, oh, whoa?
No, I went there for that reason. And, you know, I covered my camera. I thought the best I could, and I covered my hair. I read about it, you know, what to do to protect yourself and this and that, but you just are not prepared for that situation.
It's just not enough. This photo, obviously, it's beautiful, but I want to hear the you know, the story behind the shot, as they say.
Well, this was when this is the book that I did on New Zealand, and when I also trained dolphins in my spare time, so I am the dolphin whisperer. So I had these dolphins jump out. Actually, this was kind of interesting. I was on a boat, and you know, the background was absolutely gorgeous, and I saw these dolphins. And this, you know, in photography, as you know, there's a thing about being lucky, but the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I just lucked out that a dolphin jumped out in the middle and I nailed the focus with it. And because if that was out of focus, it would be nothing. It would.
It's like shooting portraits and getting the eyes out of focus. It just
Yeah,
doesn't quite
exactly.
work. Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, that was a lucky photo.
Do you think you gravitated to being more of a kind of a travel photographer? Because it seems like if you're a photographer and in a location, like say you kind of get pinpointed, you know, or corralled into, oh, you're a portrait photographer, you're a fashion photographer. Whereas if you say you're a travel photographer, it's almost expected you shoot everything from the landscapes to the people to the food to the. It seems like it's this open ticket to shoot almost anything.
Yeah, I'll buy that. Sure. And also the other thing about being a travel photographer is just the idea of just being absorbed in a culture. I mean, I never, when I teach classes and this and that, you know, the idea of people they're going to Venice for 2 days and then they're going to go to Florence for a day. And then it's like, don't just go to a place and get a ticket to a spot, have a hotel room waiting for you, have a hotel room the day before you leave, and just wing it. And you'll have so much better trip. Your images will be so much better. You'll be so much more relaxed, and you'll be so much better educated, I think, for that culture.
This photo obviously is fabulous with the smoke just encompassing his head. Did you know what you were going for when you got this, or you know, because obviously the hands are so detailed, the face. What was that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this, you know, you get these Indian guys that, or any older gentlemen or ladies, you know, the soul is, you know, hands and eyes in a portrait are definitely what you're looking for. And this guy's hands were so expressive, and he was smoking like it was his last cigarette, which it could have been. And so smoke was going all over. It's funny because we just opened up the tasting room for my son. I have a winery, and this is we have this about 40 by 50 inches.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So your approach to portrait photography, whether you know you're shooting for a commercial or for travel photography, a lot of people are kind of like they look for moments and shoot the candids, or you know some portrait photographers really kind of want to interact and feel an energy off the person and talk with them first. Where do you lie in that, or are you kind of a mix of both, or where do you lie?
No, I'm totally into. I think the idea of shooting a 400 millimeter lens across the street is really a difficult way to get images. You know, just about everyone that I'm shooting knows that I'm shooting them. I never photograph somebody that does not want me to photograph them. And I think that there's an interaction and there's an energy between the subject and the photographer that's so important to either make somebody comfortable or uncomfortable, depending on how you want the photo shoot to go.
And let's look at one of your landscapes here.
This was an interesting story. This was in Iceland.
I was going to say that.
and this was kind of a you know, you always learn lessons, and it was about 6:30, and I think the sun was setting pretty soon after that. And when I'm traveling, I'm very, very disciplined about waking up in the morning, shooting in morning light, and shooting in late afternoon to evening light.
Yeah.
And the wind was blowing like a son of a bitch, and it was raining. It was just really a nasty day. And I thought, you know, I had a nice bottle of wine, you know, maybe I just stay home and pop a bottle of wine. And then I got to be disciplined. I went out and took that picture. It was probably my favorite picture I took of Iceland. And the wind was blowing so hard that, you know, I bracketed to stay still, and I was still shooting like 125th or 250th of a second. You know, I opened the door and the wind hit the door, and you'd hear that metal creaking where the door almost it was wild.
And who's this woman?
This is in Cuba, and I call her devil proof, because in Cuba, if you eat well and drink well, the devil can't get you. And she is on our Malbec label that my son makes, that Robert Parker says the finest Malbec he's ever tasted in America and rivals the best Malbecs in the world, and gave it 97 points.
Sounds terrible.
I'm going to have one tonight.
stuff. So I want to jump into this next photo here. And I know this was early on in your photography that you took this, or?
Yeah, that photograph I took when I was going to Art Center, and it took me about 12 hours of studio lighting to do that. And from that point on, I realized that I don't want to be a studio photographer, and it became pretty clear. But it was kind of interesting because my professor at Art Center saw it. I forget his name. He's a pretty well-known photographer, and I saw in the Sunday section of the LA Times, he completely copied me. He copied the twigs in it, and the mylar and the backlit. So it was kind of a compliment.
Was there anything else you pulled learning out from this, that you took on into your photography? It was just a good lesson of still photography, and because obviously it must have taken some time, lights and reflections and shadows, and must have been quite a learning process.
It took forever. I mean, it was literally, I think it was at least 10 hours. I mean,
and that's where you kind of decided you only wanted to deal with natural lighting from then on.
Yeah, I want to be outside. Yeah, I just want to be outside. And it was funny because you're shooting with lights. You're not shooting with strobes when I was doing this, and there'd be other students around. And I remember, it had a wooden wrinkly floor, so when you're shooting, these were all probably 4-second exposures to get the depth of field. And I always remember you always say, "Quiet on the set," and everyone's supposed to stop. And then you said, "Okay." Oh, those were the days, Travis.
I tell you. So now I know this is another project you work on, and this was a one-year project, or?
Yeah, this is a project where I went around the world. I was sponsored by somebody in Colorado when I was really young. I was like 22 years old, and I bought a round the world ticket. I was photographing children from around the world, and basically the ticket, I think you can still get it today. But as long as you're going in the right direction, you can go up and down. You just couldn't come back.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I spent a year on the road with a very, very small budget. And it was like the greatest year of my life. It was absolutely unbelievable. And this was in Burma. And when I finished this project, I had these images. And Liv Ullmann, the actress who was working at UNICEF at the time, saw the images, and I thought she wanted to do the introduction for the book, and I thought, oh man, it's a done deal. I got a book gig, and I didn't. So it was, again, a lesson learned.
So instead of 15 books, now you only have 14 books.
I only have 14 now, yeah. I'd love to be a book someday, but
do you have more books in the works now, or?
I've got a book of my own work, which is the best of Andy. It sounds so
Andy's greatest hits.
Andy's greatest hits, yeah. Andy Comes Alive.
Remember this oldie but goodie.
So anyway, I'm doing that, and it's more of it's a book that's a self-published book. It's more kind of a catalog of my images. So I make my living selling prints. So it's a book that I'll sell at the winery and the tasting room, and give to people that look like they're really interested in buying some work.
So what was the main focus of this, going around and shooting children, and what was the project to you? And
Well, I just thought this would be an incredible project to do, and somehow or other I talked this guy who had some money into sponsoring me, which was really I guess I showed that I was a pretty good salesperson. So, but I did that and spent a year going around, and it was just, what an unbelievable experience. I mean, it changed my whole vision of what the world looks like. The people are, no matter where you are, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly from all over, and met some amazing friends, and actually one guy who I met who was Swedish contacted me very recently. He was into photography in those days. Now, don't forget, this was 50 years ago, 40 years ago. I'm aging myself.
It was some time ago.
It was some time ago. And But he contacted me recently because he saw my website and he wants me to come to Sweden to teach a workshop. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So this series was shot how long ago? Roughly
45 years ago.
45 years ago. And I know we had kind of talked about, shooting children offline, and imagine would it be possible to even shoot this the same way today for you?
I really don't think so. There's such a this damn smartphones have really taken the world by. I mean, I think there's some good things about it, but I think there's a lot of really bad things about it. And selfies are all people are taking. No matter what, I mean, even when I was finishing the project I was doing in India, which was a while ago, they had come up with really, really inexpensive phones in India. I mean, really inexpensive. And you would be in remote areas and people would be on the phone constantly. It was hard to take a picture if somebody wasn't on the phone.
Did you find then, like, if people were more reacting to you or the camera or both, or is it sort of because now everybody knows what a camera and everybody takes a picture. Everybody's like, back 45 years ago when you're traveling abroad, it was more the interest was you, the camera was kind of secondary and not really.
Yeah, exactly. And also it was film in those days. And now a lot of people want to see what's in the back of the screen when people are shooting digitally.
Yeah. Instant gratification, which it kind of makes it tougher. Yeah. So let's go to the next one. So tell me about this.
This is a project that I did that started when I was traveling with my parents many, many years ago. And we were in a synagogue in Egypt. And the four gentlemen there were saying that when they die, religion was going to be finished in Egypt, the Jewish religion. And I am not a religious person at all, but I found that to be incredibly powerful. So I decided that I was going to spend the next year working on a project on vanishing Jewish societies. So I went to Eastern Europe, I went to Germany, both East and West, and then I went to Russia as well. So it was a very, very interesting project, depressing project. I went to just about every concentration camp there was, and graveyards. I did a lot of work in the graveyards in that was in Czechoslovakia and Prague. It's actually a very famous graveyard at the Jewish cemetery. And the reason why it was kept is Hitler wanted to keep it as a museum of decadent religions, and that's the only reason why he didn't bomb it. So I photographed that, and amongst the time, anytime I do a project, I mean, this was on vanishing Jewish societies, but I would photograph other things as well. So anything that attracted me or was of interest to me, I would photograph.
What do you think really kind of drew you to this subject, other than, were your parents religious? Was it about tracing your history? Was it, and did you connect to a part of your history and a piece of you that you never would have if you hadn't done this?
Probably a little bit. I won't say that I came back and I became a religious Jew, which I'm not, but it certainly showed the Jewish culture and what the Jewish culture went through.
Yeah, and I certainly think knowing your history doesn't have to do anything with becoming religious. It just,
I certainly expanded on the history and knew a lot more about what was going down than when I started the project. No question about that.
So when you started the project, did it change, and what did it, and what was the initial, kind of thought or story you were telling, and how much did it change, throughout, and when did you decide, I have it?
All my projects always change. I always have ideas. I do. It's like, okay, I've got an idea. I'm going to shoot this, and then it just changes. But it did change. What I did is I just gathered as much information as I could, as many images as I could, and it ended up becoming a show that traveled around the world to museums and galleries, and it just one place shifted to the next place. It was really great. I'm actually very proud of that work. It was not.
And this is a piece from that work as well, right?
It has nothing to do with the project, but I was just walking in Hungary, in Budapest, and I saw this alleyway, and I went, "Oh my God, this is really cool." Of course, when I saw it, the lighting was pretty crummy, so I came back 3 or 4 times, and then I just photographed that. And I was shooting 6x7 black and white film in those days.
What's the most you think you've actually returned to a location to get the shot you actually wanted?
Probably the one from, well, there's 2 of them. Both of them are in Tuscany. One of these with the Tuscan trees that I went back 3 different times.
Oh, I think we have that coming up, and we'll talk about that when we get to it then.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. You'll be able to point it out.
And then the next image that you're going to show was taken in Russia at a church. And this was also part of the Vanishing Jewish Society. And I just went and, I'd go, I play tourists. I love playing tourists. It's my favorite thing. And so, I'd go to churches and this and that. And this was in a Greek Orthodox, was it a Russian Orthodox, church. And I just saw these flowers and the light looked great. And
so how long ago were you in Russia, and how long did you travel around Russia?
This was probably about 25 years ago.
So quite a different place then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you find it accessible? Well, I mean, for me, I know, like, I was not a big student, and I didn't kind of gravitate to history, but Russian history, for some reason, with all those czars and overthrowing, and I was always interested in Russian history, just as in a history aspect.
Right.
For you, what was Russia like when you were there?
Well, I was photographing things that they probably weren't that proud of, because they have a history of being very anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of the synagogues had been ruined, and people throwing stuff and writing stuff on it. So I wasn't greeted with open arms, I'll put it that way. But it was not the time when I first almost went to Russia, was when I was much younger. And in those days, it was really impossible, because they would say, you've got to get from this point to this point by this time and check in here. And virtually, you had no time to stop. You had to just get to the place as fast as
right.
you can.
At this point, when you went, it probably they already had their first McDonald's, and they were starting to open up to Western civilization.
Yeah,
and,
very much so. Yeah.
All right, let's move on our journey down your path of photography.
So I went from a project on Vanishing Jewish Society to nudes, which was a normal transition. I do it.
Much lighter, yeah.
Yeah, quite a bit lighter. My work is a lot has to do with wine, a lot has to do with nudes, and a lot has to do with this Vanishing Jewish Society. So the book that I'm going to do after this, you're asking about books, is the Nude Jews Drinking Wine. It's going to be a big seller. It's going to be huge.
There will be a dolphin in it somewhere.
Yeah, there'll be a trained dolphin in it, exactly.
So
this was in a slaughterhouse in Healdsburg, California.
What's that?
This was in a slaughterhouse.
Really?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the blue colors, is that through the windows? Where's that glow
through
coming?
Windows, and the place had a blue coloring at the bottom that was the only light source.
I mean, it looks like he was like, you either added it with gels or did it
No.
post. But I know that you didn't. I can tell.
Yeah,
it's just an incredible color there.
The whole light source was that one window.
Wow.
And it was a long exposure.
And is this something you played, like you saw the space first and said, I have to shoot here?
I saw the space first, and I thought this would be a phenomenal spot for nudes, yeah.
And is this something you when you shot nudes, was it something at this point you had done a lot of, or it was something that you were still exploring?
Well, I've been doing nudes all my life, so
yeah.
Not all my life, but a lot of my life.
Yeah. There's
a book that hopefully is going to happen with that as well.
Is there something yet as a photographer you have not explored that you're still looking for that you possibly may explore? Like, I've never shot this kind of stuff, and I really want to, but I haven't really kind of pushed myself to get there yet.
I'd love to be a war photographer if they promised they wouldn't shoot at me, but I don't think that's how that works. I'm
I don't think so.
Shit to do that. That would.
Yeah.
I've been shot at twice, and I didn't like either one at all.
What were those circumstances that that happened?
One of them was they were both traveling, and both of the shots were warning shots. But one of them was in Egypt when they had given up a lot of Israel just gave a lot of the desert to Egypt. And we went on a camping trip with a guide, and there was an Egyptian guide and an Israeli guide. And the Israeli guide told the Egyptian guide, keep on going. And we accidentally passed a checkpoint without stopping. So that's when they shot above us. So
has there been a time that you've from traveling and shooting that you for that quick second you went, we are in way over my head here, and this is I'm not sure if we're getting out of this one.
Not really. I have to say, not
other than
really,
the charging rhino, which you didn't even realize at the time.
Yeah. No, the worst condition I was in was when I had hepatitis and I was in Nigeria, and I couldn't get out of the country. But I never felt. I mean, I probably should have felt. It's a very threatening place, and it's a very dangerous place. But I never felt danger.
Yeah.
I think I'm too stupid.
When I was there, and this is not too long ago, this is only a couple of years ago, it was the hotel's like, no, I'm like, I wanted to go get a SIM card for my phone. They're like, well, we'll send you with one of our drivers. It's like, and
you were in Nigeria?
Yeah.
What were you doing there?
I went to go see things.
I did when I was in Nigeria. It was like in the 70s. It was really. I mean, I'm sure it's still not.
It was a stop through to go to on safari actually.
Got it.
So I stayed.
In the place?
What's that? I stayed at a wonderful hotel, one of the nicest hotels I've ever stayed at. I think Obama stayed there, and they took me around. And I was only there for a night or two. And at that point, I had was on my way to safari, and when I came back, we were supposed to have these luxury kind of glam tents, and when we get there, there were supposed to be power to the tents and all this, and it was like a little, well, I wouldn't even quite call it a tent. It had a little cot in it and a mosquito net, and there was no power to it, and it was built with a cement shower in the background that looked like people were slaughtered in there, and I was not very happy with it. So I'm sitting there at night, trying to use my phone to find my bag and get stuff, and there's one cot on one side, one cot on the other, and I put my phone down, and I'm a foot off the ground, and for some reason it misses and hits the ground and shatters the screen. And at this point, I just all my information is there. And we live in this age where I think I remember one phone number now, and it's probably my mom's cell phone number. It's all my flight information, all my stuff. So everything I'm trying to, in a foreign country, everything you want to do is now you have to second verify it through your phone. So I'm trying to get on my computer to get my flight information. All right, we'll send a text to your phone. I'm like, no, don't send it to my phone. So once I got back to that hotel, I think it was the Rose or something like that, they just took such good care of me that I have very fond memories of that. But I remember well, no, we won't walk around here. We don't go there. It's we'll take a driver, and going into the mall, we had to go through a metal detector, and inside the mall, we had to go through another one to get into the store. And it was just, it was a different experience for me.
Yeah.
So
when I got to Nigeria, I was missing a shot. They claimed. I think it was bullshit, and they had a needle on the ground. They said, we're going to give you an injection.
I'd say that's a scary situation there. And when you say missing a shot, it's you had 35 of 36 or something like that, or
it was basically they're after money, but this was the end of the trip, and I never had a lot of money. But what I did used to do is bring a bottle of Johnny Walker Black label, because that's it's golden. And if somebody did me a huge favor, I'd give them a bottle of Johnny Walker Black. So I did have that. So I gave the guy a bottle of Johnny Walker Black, and he let me go.
Come on through. There's a Katz. You're playing weights.
Yeah. No, this was coming into the country.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
So here,
this is in India, and I spent a lot of time in India. I did a project where I was there on and off for maybe a year and a half, and I'd go and stay in India for a month because, you know, it takes a week to get there. It's just
Did you have a love affair for India, or was it a love and hate relationship with India? I mean,
It was
I hear
totally
such
a
mixed things about India.
It was totally a love-hate relationship
Yeah.
with India. I mean, I'd go there for a month, and for the first 29 days, I'm like having the greatest time of my life. And day 30, if I didn't get out of that country, I was going to kill myself or somebody. And then I'd leave the country, and I'd be away from it, and then I could not wait to get back to India. So there was a lot more love than hate. I'll put it that way. It was 90% love.
So tell me about this lad here.
Well, this guy was putting tar on the road. And I went out and photographed him, and it was the fumes were so disgusting that I was out there probably for 10 or 15 minutes shooting him. When I came back in the car, I was just hacking up for 15 minutes. I mean, basically hacking up black shit out of it, because who knows what toxins were in there. And this guy was there all day long from morning to night doing this stuff.
And it's probably months, days, years of his life, and it's whenever we tend to think we have it bad or we had a rough day, if we've traveled the world and see moments like this, we take a moment and say, I really can't complain about a single thing.
Absolutely.
This looks like base camp before you start heading up into the mountains.
Well, this was, I was with my son. I was with my son the last shot too. I traveled with my son extensively. And so we went to India. This is northern India. And we took a road, which the History Channel did a show as the world's most dangerous road. And that's the road that my son and I went on. And
I think there's a TV show somewhere in here. You and your son traveling the world, drinking wine, and taking pictures.
You want to hear a funny story about that? It almost became a TV show. There was a producer in New York that somehow found out about us, Skyped us together, and because we're kind of funny together, because he insults me constantly and everyone thinks it's hysterical. And
that's good for TV.
Good for TV. And they flew us out to New York, and they filmed us for about 2 hours, but it never turned into anything.
Oh, it's too bad, because you know what? I would have liked to seen that. So this picture, when you obviously you've seen all these wonderful motions and color and all these flags and what were they signifying?
Well, let me just finish the story here.
Oh,
so,
of course.
My son and I were driving to the.
Oh yes, back to the most dangerous world. I mean, to road in the world.
The most dangerous road in the world, and this was really one of the most unique trips I've ever taken. We went camp. I mean, the first place we went to was this gorgeous hotel that was like one of the Taj hotels, the Taj Palace, and it was fantastic. Infinity pool. And the next place we went to after finding a driver, after about about 8 hours of driving, we get to a place which was our hotel. We flushed the toilet and water came from the ceiling. So, and that's how we went. But it was a really quite remarkable trip. And that's probably the most dangerous thing I've done, but I didn't realize exactly. Well, I kind of realized how dangerous it was when I looked at the side of the road, and it just kept on going down. But it was raining, and there was a big, massive sized boulder that went through a bus and killed 4 people in front of us, and just stopped the bus just in its tracks, because otherwise it would have gone over the cliff and everyone would have died.
You basically tell me you randomly found yourself on the most dangerous road in the world without even really kind of knowing when you were heading out to it?
This was an area that I wanted to go to.
Okay. And
we had a choice of doing like a 2-week trip or a 7-day trip. And we both wanted to do the, what the hell, you're only here once.
Yeah.
So we did. Then there was one time that we were camping, and because there's no hotels, and the driver usually sleeps in their car. So we get up, and there was literally the size of close to a football field of a dump. What do they call it when land just falls down?
Oh, a sinkhole.
A sinkhole. But
yeah.
It was a massive sinkhole. And we thought, okay, so it's going to take months to fix this thing. you know, in the remote area of India. So, so fortunately, the driver had parked on the other side of the sinkhole, so we just drove on. It was incredible, absolutely incredible.
I'd say, yeah.
So anyway, it ended up that we ended up in places like this, and that was to make a long story longer. But that area was about 19,000 feet high.
Wow.
It was the
Were you feeling it on your lungs, and you felt the difference in the air? And
oh, no question about it. Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I trekked to, you know, not to Everest, but to base camp in Kalavatara, and you know, you're doing it gradually, and you have to stop sometimes. And this wasn't that gradually, so we couldn't. You know, it was somewhat gradual over the days that we were doing it, but it was mostly driving. We were not hiking.
That's the way I was in Guatemala and hiking up one of the volcanoes, and it was one of the active ones, and I don't know why I felt like the need to be machismo and stuff like that. And it's like, if you want a horse, we got a horse. I'm like, no, I'm fine, I'll walk it. And like halfway up, I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? I'm like, taxi, give me the taxi. They bring me up a horse, and I ride the rest of the way, and all my friends are still walking. I'm like, you should have taken the horse, because I got up there, I was resting, I was talking with one of the guys and watching the volcanoes and taking pictures, and they all get up there like, I'm like, I've been up here about half an hour. I'm awesome. So moving on to your next shot here. And I know there must be a story behind this one.
This was in Cuenca, Ecuador. And this relatively recently, about a year and a half ago, no, longer than that, 3 years ago, I was in New York City, and the president of Ecuador was coming, and the person that was going to introduce the president was a friend of mine. And he said, "You've got that picture of Ecuador. Can I buy that from you to present it to the president?" I said, "Oh, absolutely." So it was a big, kind of a fancy presentation, and I presented it to the president of Ecuador, and you know, I just presented it, shook his hand, and then I went to the obvious place, the bar, and I'm sitting in the bar, and all of a sudden he comes up and he starts talking to me, and we're talking for like 25 minutes, and then all of a sudden one of the security guards comes and says, "Mr. President, the people want to meet you outside." So I did a Facebook, you know, remember then Facebook thing.
Yeah.
Me shaking his hand, and I had a friend contacted me saying he's going to jail next week.
Oh my God. Memories. Memories. So here's our next shot. The light coming through here is, to me, what draws my eye to this photo, and it's absolutely incredible. What is the story behind this shot?
Well, this is a painting on a piece of wood that had cracked.
Oh, is that right?
In a church, and then I took a candle and had my camera on a tripod, obviously, and I just held the candle, you know, for the 5 to 6 second exposure, just to get that bright light through the crack.
So you put the candle behind the frame.
Yeah.
Wow. It's it gives it this ominous kind of magical, you know, kind of read to it. It's pretty incredible. We got some more motion of the. Is this the same?
It's the same area.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
It's not the same place as the other prayer flags, but it is the same area. It's the Leh area of India. And this again, I had my camera on a tripod, and Jesse had a little Sony point and shoot, and he was underneath the flags and popped a picture to because it was very low contrast, as you can tell. The sun was setting. And so that just kind of popped the flags a little bit, and that's actually in the
and this is all natural light, and
well, no, there's a pop of a flash from
underneath. From underneath. It was
like a 6 second.
I thought you said he was taking a picture from underneath. I was about to say, you know, part of that's a little frozen for.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, that was one of the few strobe pictures I've ever taken.
Yeah, and So this is what you were going for, this kind of motion and freeze in this shot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very ethereal and like just dreamy. It's like seeing this print big would just be very relaxing up on a wall.
Thank you. Well, you have to come to the winery.
Yeah, this is one of the ones up on your wine wall, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's fabulous. I fully intend to making it to that tasting room.
Well, you fully intend to pour you some wine.
Again,
So
here we go.
India. This is at
Yep.
one of the zillions of festivals. This beautiful girl, with her family.
What would you suggest someone for their first time there to kind of the top advice, of what to do and what to avoid?
My top advice is get the hell out of the big cities.
Yeah.
Land in Mumbai and get out of there as quickly as possible. Land in Delhi and get out there. Try to get to the most remote areas possible. Hire a car. It's very inexpensive. And don't drive a car. Hire a car and a driver. I will drive anywhere in the world. I wouldn't consider driving.
There are some places in the world you let the experts do it because it is just so crazy and you just don't know the ins and outs of it too. Because it's like when I was in Uganda, it's like you could be going half an hour down the road, but if you went during what they call the jam or something like that, you would sit in your car for 2 hours and just wait because of the traffic. And there's no real other roads to go on, and if you do, they're really dirt and rocky. And so if you don't have someone that really knows what they're doing. So I noticed this next series of pictures, must be very hard and difficult and painful to talk about. So let's kind of go into them, and you can take a deep breath and tell me about them.
Yeah, this was a very upsetting situation. Jaddo sellers, they wouldn't let me bring a corkscrew or a glass.
That must have been very painful, very painful.
That's pitiful of them. I thought the least that I could do is just at least try like the 1917s or the 1914s, the 1885s, but they said no. End of subject.
Obviously,
this
wine.
Was too. I brought Studio Strobes into this book.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So when you're standing there and you're seeing labels from the 1800s and stuff like that, it's like, what is that for you? And obviously, wine and vineyards and all of that is such a huge part of your career. How did that become like such a part of you?
How did I get into photographing wine?
All of it. Your love for wine, your shooting of wine, all of that.
Well, it all started when I was living in Boulder, and a friend of mine had a restaurant in Boulder that was moving it to Vail, and it was going to be focused on California wine. So we went to Napa and Sonoma with him, and he was really very knowledgeable about wine. And he was also a chef, and he had worked as a chef in Napa before. And we were treated like kings. And I was there for 8 days with him. And basically, breakfast went on to lunch, which just turned into dinner. It was just one big drink food fest. But I really learned a lot about wine. He was a really good teacher, and he taught me a lot about wine. I was drinking all these great wines. And at that point, I just thought, I really want to come back here. So I took the images that I shot for him, brought them back, and I got 2 really big gigs, one with Domaine Chandon and one with Jordan Winery. And then Robert Mondavi saw my work, and I did a book for him. And I did a book with him, and then I did a book for him. So it all just seemed to work out.
Do you find yourself, you gravitate more to the way of life of the of European, especially like Italy, and it's like long dinners and and taking breaks during the day and working hard until a little later and just kind of enjoying the zest of life. And
yeah,
I think certainly in New York we don't tend to do that. We tend to work
with the high pace. I mean, I first appreciated that in Italy when the subways you wouldn't know when they would go on strike. And you'd be at the subway, and all of a sudden it wouldn't come, and everyone realized it was on strike. And instead of like in New York, you'll be like, "Those sons of bitches!" And in Italy, they just laugh. It's just kind of amusing. That picture so this was. I'm a huge Jimi Hendrix fan, greatest guitarist ever to live, in my humble opinion. Died at 27. What an absolute
Amazing, right? I mean, just
But he wrote this song called "Castles Made of Sand," and that was the castle that he wrote the song about, and that was in Morocco.
yeah, I think I played that song over and over and over. It's definitely one of the Hendrix songs that I gravitated to.
Yep.
So moving along, how about that transition? Is that fancy or what? Huh? We're going to unveil to, like, Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds.
This was in Chile, and this is now hanging in the U.S. Embassy in Israel. I did a project called Art and Embassies, where my work went to different embassies around the world, and this one was featured. Art and Embassies did a book, and this was on the cover of the book.
Was this chosen, or one you kind of selected to give to them, and they accepted it? Or?
They chose it from amongst 15 or so images.
It's the colors, and just it's like nature has a way when sometimes when you're traveling, of showing off these flowers and the landscapes and the skies that is truly breathtaking. Do you remember a time where you just walked into nature and just kind of like you were ready to take a picture, but you put it down because you just had to take it in and forget the camera for a moment and just like absorb it and say, wow. Often. And it's usually probably with a glass of wine, right?
Not often. I mean, when I'm shooting, it's funny you say that, because when I'm shooting at somebody's vineyard or winery,
not drinking, not touching a thing. Right?
No. I always insist to have a glass of wine.
Oh, look at you.
I always have a bottle of the wine.
It's like in your artist rider. I arrive, you have to have a glass of nice 1975 Chateau Lafite Rothschild. No.
No, that's in the book that I just finished on Bordeaux on the first gross. I could ask, but they were not going to give that to me. But when I'm shooting someplace in California or Oregon or Washington or South America, I would say, okay, I'm going to photograph your vineyard. Can I have some wine from that vineyard to have with me? Well, this was from a book called Tuscany and Its Wines that was a chronicle book. But this is printed in 5 different languages. This is actually by far sold more prints and more books than any.
Is this one of those moments it took days to get it, or you just kind of woke up and you got out there early enough that there was this fog, or did you know that there was going to be a fog? Because like it's a beautiful, the light, everything is. Did you luck upon this, or this was days of research or knowing the area, or?
Well, I knew that area is called Volpaia, and I knew that area, and it was beautiful. But a lot of photography is luck, but the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Exactly. Because you get some people that know exactly what time the sun's rising, what days it's going to be humid, if they're going to get, fog, if they're going to be
that's true, but it doesn't,
doesn't guarantee anything. It just, it's
like,
hedging your bets, the little more information you have, the luckier and luckier you get, as they say.
Yep,
right? Yep. I just kind of want to walk around there.
Well, this is from the cover of the book that I did called The Heart of Burgundy with Robert Parker, who's a very famous wine writer and wine critic as well. And that house that's illuminated is the house that I rented. And my landlord used to go, "Are you going to your house?" And so I called this one my house. And I was with my son, and I told him to go to the house and turn on all the lights. And when the print is blown up, you can see his shadow looking outside to make sure everything was cool.
How long did you spend here?
It was about a year long, a little bit over a year long.
Really?
But I'd go there for 10 days, and then I'd come back to the States for 2.5 months. I just wanted to get all the seasons plus 2 harvests.
Do you find yourself when you in some place rural like this, where you're kind of removed from all the hustle and bustle and people and stuff like that? Do you actually does that make you relax and have a great time? Like, I know some people, like, you put them in Cuba and they realize they can't have internet. They're freaking out and they don't know what to do. How are you? Is this something you relish, or is it something that I'm good for like 8 days and then I need to get out of there?
No. I've always, when I was living in Boulder, I lived 8,000 feet up and, in a very, very remote area. I'm comfortable, I'm comfortable any place except for Nigeria.
Yeah. Are there any certain things you need? Like, I got to have internet, or I got to have, nope, I just want my
No,
family, or.
it really depends. If I'm in the middle of nowhere, I'm fine with that internet. I
Yeah.
can go. I'm a news junkie, and it's probably good for me to get away from that for a while.
I got to tell you, November, it will dictate whether I watch the news for another 4 years or not.
It will dictate whether I'm going to be an American citizen for years or not.
So this, I believe, is a picture we kind of briefly talked about earlier, right?
This is an area in Tuscany, and this is an area I go back to. Anytime I go to Tuscany, I go and visit these trees, and I got pictures of lightning there. And it's funny because I've been going over images for the book that I'm doing now, and I'm just going over a time that I was there shooting black and white images. Well, actually, I was shooting with the Sony, converting them to black and white.
There definitely seems something so special about Tuscany. I don't know what it is. When I went there, even the color of the earth and the greens and the colors in Tuscany, there's something just kind of surreal about it and special about that area. Did you find that, or?
I love Tuscany. I feel very at home in Tuscany. I wish I could speak Italian.
Me too.
I just love that area.
Are there any other languages you speak, or is it, nope, it's just English?
I'm working on English, and I'm not good at it.
I'm
stumbling through English.
I'm hoping to get a passing grade at some point.
Yeah.
I might be on a pass-fail. I'm not sure.
I think I passed, but not
this is sort of, it looks surreal. It literally looks like, it's like a composite of stuff because it's just so beautiful.
Thank you.
And where was this?
This is the Napa Sonoma border. Backlit, just.
And the lighting, the trees. Everybody sort of looks for this road, and I've seen a lot of fake versions of this where someone takes half of one road and puts it on the other half. This is the real deal, and pretty darn beautiful. Where was this?
This is in Tuscany as well. This is in an area called Bulgari, but it really doesn't look like Bulgari. I just kind of flew around and found this place and just thought, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And this is the image where, I went the next morning and got there around 5:30, and then this bright red sun came out. And I liked the image so much that I went back 3 other times to shoot, but the first time was by far the best.
Have you repeatedly shot a place just to get different light over periods of time?
Oh, sure.
Times,
Yeah.
repeated.
If you find some place that really is appealing and you can do it,
yeah,
you might as well. Depending on how much time you have and how much time you're there and how many other things you need to shoot.
All right, I know this has a story.
Well, this is one of the only photographs I took in Nigeria, because people told me don't photograph children in Nigeria, you'll end up in jail. And they said basically don't photograph anything in Nigeria.
So was this like from the hip, or you actually just brought this the eye, took a picture?
I thought she was absolutely gorgeous. And,
yeah. But you didn't try and.
When I'm giving Nigeria a bad name, obviously it's. The people in Nigeria probably are lovely. They're just in a situation that's so difficult for them.
No, and a lot of places it has nothing to do with the people. It has to do with just the government, the policing, and the way they deal with tourists and travelers, and it can be a very difficult situation. I know I've been to certain places where the people have been absolutely lovely. So I think this next picture is another one of your nudes, and why don't you tell me about this one?
This is in Arizona, and this is simple photography. It's just you got this beautiful space. You wait for the light to be right, and just click the shutter. This is just too easy.
It's there are some things, when you have that beautiful background or the light is just right, you feel like you're kind of cheating the system. It's like, I know when I shot on movies behind the scenes, he's like, it's like, they spent hours lighting up these actors and makeup and the gaffers hanging lights all over the place and setting the mood. I just could put a camera almost anywhere and I'm going to get a great shot. It's like, I feel like, all right, yeah, this is really tough what I'm doing. So I think this brings us to the last picture of what you've sent me, and I think it's a beautiful parting kind of picture. What is the story behind this?
I did a book on New Zealand. It was actually my first endeavor with digital photography, and this was a long exposure, and I was pulled over, set up my tripod, and had a really long exposure. But the one thing I totally remember in that photograph is the mosquitoes were insane. And I got back into my camper van there and I was just eaten up.
Yeah, I think I have the blood type and the taste that I'm a main course for them.
But then again, when I say this, it's like, yeah, I'm out there and I got bit by mosquitoes. Then I'm thinking about, war photographers that shot at. So I should shut the hell up.
Yeah. Well, mosquitoes, you could have gotten malaria. You were taking your life in your hands. All right.
I'm a brave man.
Yeah, exactly. So being a Sony artisan and adopting digital and starting in film, do you ever pine or still shoot film, or are you totally happy with digital and you're in a happy place?
Switched to digital, I never went back.
Yeah. You don't feel you're missing anything or lacking, because some people are like, oh, you never get the same quality. And like, for me, I was always like, you know what, I could maybe understand that with medium format, maybe, and large format. I get it because of all the different ways of focusing and stuff like that. But I've never felt I've missed anything on a 35mm digital camera.
I'll tell you, the sensors that Sony have produced, I'm shooting with an extremely light camera that's got 62 megapixels. That I can blow up something the size of a wall that would be in the same ballpark as a 4x5. Why would I, even when I was shooting film, I didn't like 35. I didn't like, I shot a tremendous amount of 35, but I didn't like the results as much as medium format. I much prefer shooting medium format. The results were far, far, far better in my opinion.
Yeah. Are you always someone that, like, if you're going out, grabs a camera, do you have a camera that you bring, like, just when you're not actually shooting, just for fun?
Yeah, Sony makes a camera called the RX100, which is a point and shoot that you can put in your breast pocket.
Yeah.
It's just astounding.
Yeah, I have the new video version of that one.
Unbelievable.
The V1. The ZV1, yeah, and yeah. I also have a version 4 of the 100, and it's tough because some of them were like 70 to 24 to 71.8, and then some of them were like 24 to 200, and 2.8. I'm like, it's like I want both of them. They're all so good. Do you use your cell phone for pictures at all, or like do you ever break that out? And are you happy with your iPhone or Android?
I use cell phones when I park my car and I try to remember where I parked it. I don't try to do too much artwork with my cell phone.
I do that when there's a product I want in a store. I want to remember the label so I can look it up and buy it at home on Amazon or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to quickly just kind of go into COVID and just the world and the craziness that's going on. I know, were you traveling, or what were you doing when I guess all of us sort of realized this was something starting to get serious around March. We knew that it was something, but March 10th through the 20th was when our world started changing. What was the change for you in that?
Well, I had 3 one-man shows that were happening this summer. I had 2 major wine events that our wines were going to be featured at, not just there. I had 3 book deals proposals with people that were out there, and all that just completely tumbled down immediately. Yeah.
And how did it change life for you? Did you suddenly it's like you're just like, I'm just going to stay at home and start working and do some, figure out different things to do, or did you immediately start I'm gonna heed the warnings and stay at home, and what was life different for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we were staying in place in San Francisco, I was pretty damn good about that. And, you know, I have to say there was just no way that I was feeling sorry for myself. I still could do work.
Yeah.
You know, and our wine doesn't go bad. It just gets better. You know, I felt really sorry for people that own restaurants and, you know, people that had just devastating situations in their life. So I didn't do any whining. I might have done some, but I slap myself every time I start wine.
But you've had to adapt, and being, you know, being a Sony artist and being, you know, involved in a winery and a tasting room and being, you know, someone that's supposed to have shows. How are you adapting, and what are the conversations that you're having? Like, what are you doing now to kind of pivot from everything that you were doing differently now? Because we have to adapt, even though we don't have quite the answers of where we're going. We're already making changes. What are you doing?
We have no friggin' idea where
not at all. And it doesn't seem like there's a quick answer for this either. It's like we're still in this limbo.
I think that in a short, I'm not willing, you know, I think that in spite of what the president is saying, I think that in a perfect world in a year, we'll have something that's going to take care of issues, whether it might not be a, where did that come from? Sorry about that. Hey, babe, I'm being interviewed. Are you home? I'm being interviewed. So are you coming home? Okay, I'm in your office. Bye.
I'm in your office playing with things.
Yeah. So so what I was what I'm going to do? What was the
yeah? So I mean, what kind of changes and adapt are you already making? You know, and what conversations you've had in the industry? You know, commercially, books. You know,
I think that the one thing that this does is it gets you a little introspective. You know, you're trying to figure out what you want to do next, the ideas of how you're going to do something next. And, you know, I think that, you know, in a period of time, this will be resolved. I think it's going to be much longer than we were told it's going to be, but it will be resolved. And then just do what you can. I mean, there's so many files that I had an opportunity to go over, kind of coming up with projects that you're going to do, going out and shoot where it's safe. There's still tons of stuff we still can do and still be safe.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that no matter how bad things get in the world, entertainment is always a relief for suffering and needed and a very human thing that we strive and always want to reach out for, even in the worst of times. And I think, you know, as artists, you know, it may be a very difficult time for a lot of artists, and a lot aren't going to make it through this, you know, and they're going to have to figure out, you know, other means of income and stuff like that. But I think as human beings, we'll never stop creating art and the need for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And with that, I kind of want to ask, are you kind of ride to die at photography till, you know, there's no breath left in you? Or is there a time you're going to kind of say, you know what, I'm going to enjoy the rest of my life. I'm going to put my camera down and smell the roses?
I couldn't do that. I'd be, I'd be miserable. If somebody gave me, if I won the lottery and somebody gave me a private jet and $1 billion, I'd be basically doing exactly what I'm doing now with
just a lot more.
Well, I'd be doing a lot more. Well, yeah, I don't know. I was pretty active when you could travel. My biggest difference was I would be going first class or business class as opposed to the back of the bus.
Is there a place yet that you haven't crossed off the bucket list that's really high up there that you want to hit next?
Well, there's a lot of places in Africa that I haven't been. I mean, I've been to, you know, I've been to a lot of the world, but Africa, there's still probably 20 places that I'll go to.
Yeah, it's amazing. I bet I was only there for, you know, maybe 14 days, and in the percent of what I felt I saw there was like 0.000000001%.
Big continent. That's
and it's really a magical place. The people, the zest for life, the music, the culture. It's it's one of the places that is so unique upon itself. Like, I mean, if you can travel around a lot of Europe, and there's a lot of similarities. Africa is a world upon itself that's really, really special. And one place I haven't been here, Israel, is a lot like that too. It's a very incredible place, and one that is on mine as well. So with that, I have a couple questions I kind of want to wrap up with you that I kind of ask all my photographers. You have a son, you are a teacher and educator, you're someone that has passed on knowledge, but what was a piece of nugget of knowledge that was given to you that you love to adopt into your, own kind of repertoire and spread as well? A wonderful piece of advice that you kind of always, like, it meant so much to you that you always pass it on.
Be passionate.
It doesn't get much more simple than that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I won't even ask you to elaborate on that, but I will ask you to elaborate on the most personal level, and not, a definition of what it is. What is photography to you?
Life. Yeah, I mean,
it's funny how that's the things that mean the most of us sometimes can only be explained in no words or one or two words.
Yeah.
So if heaven existed and there was a wonderful gallery show, and the first night you got there was the opening of the artist you most wanted to see, who would it be?
I'd have to say Joseph Karsh, because he's the one that got me into photography.
Yeah. That's pretty wonderful. We're going to run into a quick segment here that I've started doing on this new kind of revamped open talk, and it is pulled from social media. So I have some images here that have been pulled from your social media. So let's kind of go through them, and just, what comes to the top of your head, or what story or why it was posted, or what it means to you is what it's all about. So here comes the first photo.
Well, there's two of them there.
You get to see two?
Yeah. I
share on the wrong screen. All right, we're going to pretend I'm going to do this all over.
Yeah.
Because, you know what? Travis fucked up.
It happens.
I know, right? Yeah, it happens when, it's funny. I record these live for the first 15 of them. I recorded live every Thursday. So I had to do this all live. And now that I'm recording them to ease up on my life and kind of, edit them and put them, that's when I start making the mistakes. All right. So we'll cut in this again. All right. So this new segment is pulled from social media. These actually have been pulled from your social media, and you did not know which ones I'm going to pull. So we're just going to throw an image up and you tell me about it.
So these are the original Artisans of Imagery. And we have all dear friends, Matthew Jordan Smith and Brian Smith. When they first started the Artisans of Imagery program, if your last name was Smith, the chances of getting in were a lot better. And my dear friend Christine Mittermeier, who is, look at that beautiful smile.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
So you know what, just asking, you've been an artisan for how long now?
11 years.
11
I was
years.
the first group. This was the first group, what you see there.
So going from the very beginning till now, and you've seen other camera companies, you've seen other camera communities. For me, obviously there's no lie in hiding it that I'm a full-in Sony person and part of the Sony family. But there's something about Sony that is different than everybody else, the community and the people. What is it to you, and why do you stay there? And what is it, what has Sony brought to you in a way that no one else has, really?
Well, I sincerely think they're making the world's greatest camera, and they've been the most innovative company, and I don't even think anybody can argue that. They were the first with the mirrorless. Their lenses are, if you look at DxO and compare optics, their lenses are always one or two. And the people are absolutely fantastic. My boss is Kayla Lindquist, one of the great human beings on earth. And,
Kayla is honestly one of those people that will always be so brutally honest that she is the person that I call for help when I really need it, and when I want an honest opinion. And she's a beautiful. I agree. She's one of the most beautiful people that I know, and honest in a way that is the right type of honesty.
Yeah,
and caring. All right, so we're going to
go. Great Sony community. They're
yeah. And that's what, it's like you can buy any camera. There's, like I tell people, every camera company makes a great flagship camera, but
Sure.
Sony makes a great camera, but their community and the way they listen to people and the community they listen to in a way that makes people just want to share with each other and builds an excitement like no other company I've seen. And it's infectious. It really is. Yeah. And people hear us like, oh, you're just like a Sony fanboy. I'm like, no, I can switch. And I own a Canon, I own a Fuji, but if I have to take one camera anywhere in the world, it's going to be my Sony. And if I'm going to go hang out at any Sony, like any event, it's going to be a Sony event because those are my people. It's like, it's like I would assume it's like Comic-Con or, it's like those are my peeps.
I'm not sure how to take that with Comic-Con, but
well, it's just like so here's the second pull.
Okay. So this is my guide in Namibia, Boss, and what a great guy. He was a member of the Himba tribe, and he spoke 7 or 8 languages. Most of them dialects and he was just great. I'd say, Boss, what's the most beautiful country in the world? Namibia. I said, of all the world, what's the most beautiful? Namibia. Boss, how many countries have you been? Namibia. But I mean, this guy was just absolutely, we became really good friends. I'm in contact with him constantly. And, he's just a wonderful, wonderful person.
I love it. So here is our next poll.
There we go. Okay, so this was my son. There's an event called Pigs and Pinot. Charlie Palmer, very famous chef, celebrity chef, and once a year, this year is canceled, of course, but once a year he picks 150 Pinots from around the world. Probably a majority of them are from California and Oregon, some from New Zealand, and some from Burgundy. And out of the 150 of this particular year, they range from $29 to about $450. And master sommeliers and master of wine were the tasters. And the number one wine was the $29 wine that my son made for Roth, of 150 wines. And
So you're traveling around with your son and the wine. So is that where he got the love for this, or where did it come from?
I taught him everything. Of course.
I love it.
Yes, it is, though. It really is, because he's been traveling with me all my life, and a lot of the travel, or all his life, I should say, a lot of the travel were in wine areas. He became very comfortable in wine areas and drinking wine when he was really young.
I had to pull this picture. I had to pull this next picture.
This is the new tasting room. So this is where I want everyone to come and visit.
Where is it?
It's in Healdsburg, California. And it's a really stunning space. The architect
I kind of like what they did with the light above the little section there.
Right, the aperture.
Yeah.
So
somebody tied in some cool things there.
Yeah, well, that's the name of the label's Aperture as well.
Yeah, so it's incredible that the architecture that they did that light that way, and the room just looks so cozy, inviting, and
there's rooms to the side of it too. So there's different experiences. There's the Aperture experience and the Devil Proof, which is our Malbec experience.
Oh yeah. When does it was it opening delayed, or where is it at right now?
We were gonna have a big massive party opening. That didn't happen, but the actual opening is today.
Is that right?
Yeah, but it's by invite only. There's only I mean it's
so you didn't get invited.
Yeah, right. I shouldn't say you have to set up a time where you're there. So it's not like there's 50 people there. There's
all the social distancing and spacing out.
Even without that, we're not going to have tons of people there.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Small groups.
Nothing like a good intimate experience.
Exactly.
All right, this brings us to our last social media poll picture.
Okay. So this was in South Africa, and I was doing a pro bono project for a an orphanage, and this woman, oh my God, she handled. I mean, there was probably about 80 kids in her orphanage, and she did everything. She was unbelievable. So this is an aspiring Sony artisan that's ready to grab my camera.
I have a picture very similar to this. And when I was in Uganda, I was working with a team out there, and one day I explored out on my own, and we probably drove around maybe 3.5, 4 hours outside of Uganda to a place called Wells of Hope, and it was a bunch of kids that basically their parents were either on death row or had been executed and had no one to care for them. So there was a little girls' dormitory and a boys' dormitory, and they ate the same kind of mush every single day. There was a little schoolhouse, so they put them in up until, like, you know, through high school and stuff like that. And I sat on those pictures almost a year because I just didn't know what to do with them. I just when I arrived there, they knew I was coming, and they kind of sang and greeted me, and the whole day they wanted, you know, they fixed me meals and had me sit with them, and it was so emotional and so overwhelming that I kind of like fried for a second, and I just didn't know what to do. And just recently I brought those pictures to fruition in COVID. I actually sat there and edited those pictures. And have you had an experience where you've shot something that you just sat on because you weren't sure, and it was just a moment like that, or anything?
Well, I'm having all my, this is going to happen a lot, because I'm having all my negatives scanned. I mean, my whole, which is like 150 books of negatives. Yeah.
Which is great for, you know, because of archival, and we would tend, you know, negatives, you know, are fragile pieces, and to, you know, scan them and have that and be able to do almost anything with them and work with them is a great thing.
Yeah. And now I'm scanning with a Sony camera, so it's directly from the camera to.
Is it a special setup, or how are you actually, you know?
It's basically like a copy camera.
Oh wow!
And Peter Crow kind of invented this process, and it is the scans are magnificent. I mean, they're better than the Imicon scans that I've had.
And you know, I remember how, like, you know, you had to sit there in a special software for the Imicon and try to figure it out, and it just drove you crazy. I'm like, but it was cool looking, you know, that kind of shape. I mean, I'm like, ooh, how much are they? $25,000. Keep it.
Beautifully designed product. Yeah.
So this brings us up to our final moment, where we're going to go through a speed round, where I'm just going to ask you a couple speed questions, and you can give me an answer, anything off the top of your head. And what is your spirit animal?
Spirit animal. Well, I'm a huge dog lover, so I'm going with that.
You go with dog?
But a rhino almost killed me, son. I love rhinos. So
maybe that was a sign. Maybe
dog rhino.
Never spend a time out, on a preservation, doing ayahuasca and finding your spirit animal.
Yeah, a dog rhino.
I don't know. You figured, you went to enough Dead concerts, you might have met your spirit animal or something like that. Have you ever sent a text message to the wrong person?
Yeah.
How bad was it?
Wasn't good, and we'll go on to the next subject.
Do you have a favorite holiday?
It's got to be Father's Day, right?
Well, no, it doesn't have to be, but if that's what it is. For me, it wasn't even Christmas. I think it was Thanksgiving, because it was a day that we all just sat there and cooked and laughed.
Thanksgiving.
Sat around the table for hours and hours and hours and hours and just laughed. And, then
Thanksgiving is really up there. Yeah. I love Thanksgiving. I usually around some really, really close friends. So Father's Day I love because it's just me and my son. But Thanksgiving is
that makes sense. So, yeah. What was the last thing you watched on TV?
Fauda.
Ah, okay.
Awesome.
What is your favorite varietal of grape?
Cabernet Sauvignon.
Cabernet. Fantastic. And in ode and tribute to the Actors Playhouse, or the Actors Studio, should I say, what is your favorite curse word?
Bastard.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time with me and really sharing.
And motherfucker is number 2.
I got to tell you, fuck is the universal word that I can use on anything. It can be the worst or the best. I mean, it covers everything. It's just like, oh, that's the best thing. It's the worst thing. It's terrible. It's like this or that. It's like, it really is the universal word for everything. So I want to thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait to be in the same room with you. And, hopefully we get to a time we can give each other a big hug and share more stories. I always ask my final question.
Sure.
Hopefully soon, and hopefully in your tasting room, and if not there, another Kando event or something like that. But the final question that I have that I ask everybody is, what's something you've seen in the last say month or that has given you hope for the future or made you smile?
I think it's the the doctors, the nurses that are putting their life on the line to help people stay alive. I think it's just absolutely phenomenal. These are people, especially people that are, flying from Pittsburgh to New York, and I mean, it's just amazing. So my hat's totally off to those folks.
I agree with you. And with that, this is another Open Talk, and thank you very much.
Thanks, buddy.
Okay, you ready to record it for real?
When is this going to be on? Or
this will be like the way it's going to happen is because these are now longer. This will probably get split into 2 episodes. So Miguel Quiles is next. So tonight is Samantha Issam, who shoots Sony on a lot of underwater stuff. Mm-hmm. But then the following week will be Miguel. That'll be 2 weeks. Then Colby. That'll be 2 weeks. So I'll send you a link to yours, but it'll go up on YouTube. Oh, absolutely. And yours will be split into 2 episodes as well.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Stay safe.
You too. Take care, bro.